Hey adventurers, so today is going to be our September wrap-up, and this is a couple weeks late, but that's just the way that it's going to be this year. Okay, first book that I read in September was The Scorched Trials. This is the second book in the Maze Runner series by James Dashner. I really enjoyed the first book. I tend to enjoy the dystopian books, sci-fi and fantasy books, and it's just, I like the world building, I like the way of telling stories, and I like how they can use the world building as a way to tell the story as much as anything else, and as a way of commentary to some degree on certain aspects of our world. And I don't like preachy books, but most of the time dystopian novels aren't that. So I enjoy that aspect of it. So this is the second book in the Maze Runner series, not as good as the first one in my opinion. There was some really good things about it, some really interesting things about it. You start learning more about the world and fleshing out the world quite a bit more, but not as good of a story as the first one.
So the first book I finished in the month of September was We'll Always Have Summer. I believe this is by Jenny Han. This is the third and final book in the Summer I Turned Pretty series. I've actually read this whole series now, and I kept reading it because, one, it's an easy writing style to read. Sometimes I just want that easy fluff, and it is definitely fluff. But I kept hoping it would redeem itself, and it never did. I didn't like the books. I don't like the main character. She's whiny, she's self-centered, she's very immature, and the whole aspect of the relationships was just weird, and overall it just wasn't healthy. So it's not the right way to put it. It gets a lot of publicity, the stories, especially since the TV show came out. Overall, didn't love it. It was easy to read though.
The next book that I finished was Upgrade by Blake Crouch. This is a kind of like a somewhat dystopian, kind of like a modern science fiction novel. Very similar in genre to like the Calculated series, which I've read and loved, or what's some of the other... There's some other examples that I had when I was first reading and talking about this book with the various people who I was reading it with. It's kind of just another entry into that modern day sci-fi thriller genre, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. Not my favorite. There were some aspects of it that I did not care for at all. I didn't think they were executed nearly as much or as well as they needed to have been. So there was that for sure, but there was some really cool stuff in it as well, and it was definitely an engaging, quick read. Then I also read New Spring, which is the prequel novel to the Wheel of Time series, and this is a series where you're supposed to, everybody says either wait until after you've read all the main books in the Wheel of Time series and then go back and read it, or read it after book 6. And so I read book 6 and then it became available, so I read New Spring. And I don't have a ton of thoughts on it. I liked some aspects of it, didn't care for other aspects of it. It's just Wheel of Time is not my series, and that's fine. There's aspects of Wheel of Time that I really appreciate and really enjoy, but just the series as a whole is fine.
So the other book I read in September was Persuasion by Jane Austen. I started this on the hard copy and then I switched to audiobook for the rest of it because I was struggling to stay engaged with the book. And even with audiobook, I ended up needing to listen to some chapter summaries on YouTube. Once I listened to the chapter summaries, I understood it a lot better and I was able to enjoy the story a lot more and the characters. After I finished it, as per usual, I went and tried to find some movies of Persuasion to watch. The first one I watched was the most recent one. I did not like it. Did not think it was done well. I can't remember if I watched another one after that or if I just found one and wanted to watch it. Either way, I wished I would have watched the movie first, because for books that are a little bit more challenging to read with the language and the vocabulary used, especially Jane Austen's books, which have a lot of different layers to them that is really fascinating to unpack if you can, I find that I enjoy having an idea of the story before I jump into it. So watching the movie would have helped that, as long as it wasn't the most recent one. So it's not my favorite Jane Austen book, but of course I'm glad I read it, and I did really enjoy some things about it.
The next one that I that I read was Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. This is one that I don't have a copy. This is my mom's copy, and it was just sitting around. I have an abridged edition somewhere in my boxes, but I don't know where exactly. But this is one that I've needed to read for years, and the unabridged version I've needed to read for years, and I really didn't know anything about this before I went into it, because it's been years since I read the unabridged version, and I didn't know the story at all. I wanted to read it though specifically because there's been a lot of talk about a self-published book called The Wickwire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan recently, and one of the ways that Tori from Tori Talks tries to describe the book is that it's Oliver Twist meets Howl's Moving Castle. And I have no idea how that would work. I've gotten a little bit better of an idea since as I continue to think about Howl's Moving Castle, and after having read Oliver's Twist, and then having learned a little bit more about the Wickwire Watch. But because of that, I wanted to read Oliver Twist so that I could have a reference for why people are saying that. And I did really enjoy it. One of my probably one of my favorite books of the month for sure. Especially since it wasn't a reread for me. So yeah.
I also read Failed State Nemesis by John Oddie. I have read all of John Oddie's other Failed State books so far. I really love the superhero aspect. I love seeing his contemporary world with superheroes, and then how the superheroes' faith affects them and affects their decision, and how it's tied into the world. It's not something you find a lot in general in fiction, so I really enjoyed that about the stories. This particular one was my least favorite. It felt like a carbon copy of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. However, I do not know which came out first, so keep that in mind. I'll have to look that up at some point. That being said, there was a couple choices made that happened in story that, while from a story perspective, they just felt unnecessary. It was too much attempt to try and like hurt our hearts that it felt unnecessary, if that makes sense. Overall, I mean, there was nothing wrong with the story. It was fine, but just for my preferences, it was too much. Anyhow, I am excited to read more of John Oddie's books. I've heard a lot of great things about him, and I do really enjoy his writing style. It's very easy to read, and I like reading contemporary fiction, so it's nice having clean books to read.
Okay, so I've got these next two. One of them is book 2 that I've already read, and then the next one is book 3, which I just came out and I read and released a review for it since it was brand new. Anyway, so the first one is Bone Shroud by Andrew D. Meredith. This is the second book in the Collation saga, and I've already read this. I've already got a review of it up, and I just absolutely loved the book the first time around, but there was some things about it that I wanted to refresh my memory on, and to pick up some more of the subtleties of the story before moving into book 3, since I didn't remember everything about it. So I went back and reread book 1, which is Deathless Beast, in August, and then in September I reread Bone Shroud, just to kind of refresh my memory and to hopefully clarify some of the things that I was a little bit confused on the first time, which it did. So that's good. And then I went right into Gloves of Eons, which is book 3 of the Collation saga. It was released on the 28th of September, I believe. So it's very new, but I was sent an audio arc, and so I was able to listen to it and get a review up on the day of release. So that was really cool. Again, just absolutely love the series. This one tones down the battle action quite a bit, and it becomes far more political in the various religious sects and stuff vying for power, and seeing who's going to come out on top in that war, essentially, is what it is. And it was really cool. Lots of stuff regarding the gods of the world, and how faith interacts with magic and world building and characters and religion and the various gods and all that stuff. So it was really cool still. So then I did a reread of Dune by Frank Herbert. This is one that I've read in the past, I don't know, 2019 or something like that, and I enjoyed it. No, it was late in that because we didn't start till 2020, so it was 21 that I read it. But I really enjoyed it the first time around, and I wanted to... The first time I read it in preparation for the movie because I needed to read it and the movie was coming out, and so then I read the book so that I could go watch the movie and be informed, and really liked the movie, or most aspects of the movie, and then I pretty much forgot everything that happened because it's been 2 years now since I read it or watched the movie. I mean, I remember the movie very clearly because it's very visual, very atmospheric, and I tend to remember atmospheric things really well. But then I wanted to reread the book so that I could prepare for the second half of the Dune movie, or Dune Part 2 or whatever it's called. And so I reread the book, found a chapter or a section of the book that I did not remember at all from my first read, so that was cool. And then just refreshed myself on how everything worked, picked up a lot of new details about the story, and yeah. Mostly it was just a reread for me though, and I don't have a whole lot more to say about it.
Okay, So I read one more book, well, a couple more books in September, but it was The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. I hadn't heard really anything about this book. I picked it up at the bookstore because I liked the cover and it sounded interesting. It was very atmospheric, and now that I've read it, I've discovered that it's a little bit more well-loved than I realized. It's a very atmospheric book. I love the type of academy setting, highly intelligent children. All of those things are things I really appreciated, and then the themes in the story were well woven in and well presented. Overall, just a really enjoyable book. I did listen to it on audiobook, and I really loved it. It was fantastic.
So then I have Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is one that, again, I've needed to read it for a very, very long time, but I was participating in a readathon, and one of the prompts, basically the book that ended up working for the prompt was something by Ray Bradbury. And so I was looking and trying to find out which ones were available. Fahrenheit 451 was available at the time that I needed to read it, and so I was like, okay, well, we'll listen to that one. Again, dystopian novel, it's not written recently. This was written in, when was it originally written? 1950?
Yeah, it's not new.
So definitely not a new book by any means, or a new dystopian novel by any means, but it was one that I needed to read, and it still feels so modern. It still feels very much like this is the type of story that could be written today as a dystopian novel, without obviously the YA romance garbage. YA romance stuff that I don't care for. We'll phrase it that way, since that's less abrasive. But I did really enjoy that one as well. And then I listened to The Mysterious Affair at Styles. This is technically, this is the first book in the Hercule Poirot mystery series by Agatha Christie. This is one, I listened to it because who was I talking to? I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was mentioning, it was Andrew D. Meredith and Patricia Meredith, his wife, and Nico from Nico's Book Reviews, and they were doing a watch party for the Hobbit movies, and I was chatting to them during the watch party, and I mentioned something about Richard Armitage having narrated books, and then it got me thinking, I want to go listen to one of the books that he's narrated. So I went and found one, and it happened to be The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which is an Agatha Christie and a Poirot novel, and Armitage's narration is great. Unfortunately, I don't love the story that much. I think it might just be Poirot. I don't know if it's Poirot or if it's Agatha Christie, because I haven't read anything outside of her Poirot novels yet.
Yeah.
But I don't love them. I don't think they're that great of books, and that might lose me some followers or something, but that's the way it is. Not all books are for every single person, and that's fine. I didn't love the book. I don't know. I think I wrote a little bit down about what I didn't love about it, but I didn't. I don't remember now.
So the last book I finished in the month of September is Death of a Christmas Tree Salesman. This is a new release by Patricia Meredith that'll be coming out in November, I believe.
13th, yeah.
November 13th. Chock full of Christmas everything. It's a murder mystery, and I highly recommend checking it out if you're a fan of Christmas at all. It's very, very good. It was an e-arc, yeah.
Yes. I read it too. I don't remember when I finished it,
I think it was maybe the day after.
It was either
October 1st.
Yeah, something like that, but that's right. Then I've got, the last book that I read in the month of September was Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the first book in the prequel series to Rhaeria Revelations, I believe is the series. I'm not positive about that. Yes, Rhaeria Revelations. It's a hard word to say. Anyways, so this is a prequel series, the first book in the prequel series. And it feels very much like a first book in a prequel series. But at the same time, it is very much thousands and thousands of years. It's like the early history of this world, and it feels like that. It feels like that mythology in the way that stories are told, in the way that people look at the world, see the world, the things that they believe, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that I really liked about it. A lot of things that were just like, this definitely feels like a series that he's written a whole bunch of other books in already, and he's now going and writing a prequel too. The other thing is, rarely do I notice it, but I didn't love his writing style. It's very strange for me to not love to specifically make note of whether or not I like a author's writing style. And this one was not my favorite. Luckily, the narrator, which is he's the same narrator who did Dawn of Wonder, which that's why I know him, is because he did Dawn of Wonder. And anyways, I like the narrator. I don't care for the writing style of this book, which is interesting to me. But other than that, the story, the world, good, solid. Definitely want to continue reading this stuff. It was clean fantasy, and I'm always looking for more clean fantasy, so that was good. But I just find it interesting that I didn't love the writing style, and that I made note of it. And that is all the books that I read in September.
Thank you guys all for watching an Erudite adventure. Please feel free to let us know in the comments below what you read in the month of September.
And why I'm wrong about my opinion on Agatha Christie.
And Hercule Poirot.
But other than that, no. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.